The big deal today, Francesinha Friday. There it is. There's that beauty of a thing, and I'm going to tell you more about that. I'm going to go to Wikipedia to tell you all about that. We're going to look at Wikipedia together. It's like story time here on the Good Morning Portugal show. If you've just joined me, if you're hearing this for the first time, let me just open up my phone here. Then please say who you are, where you are, and maybe you could say if you have tried the Francesinha, or if you, what was your first time with the Francesinha? What was your first time? What was the best one you've ever had here in Portugal? Was it in Porto, in the epicenter of Francesinhan activity and origin, which I'll tell you about in just a moment? So have you had one of those? What was the best one you've had? Would you not want to touch it with a barge pole? Some of my friends, I think, would take a barge pole approach to the Francesinha. But I have to say, I got very amused and excited. I was going to say incited. Yeah, I suppose incited is fair, about the meme that I saw that suggests that the Francesinha can indeed kill the coronavirus, which, of course, yes, this is not a show about medical advice, and that may not be medically true before we end up in a fact-checking nightmare and a fake news storm. That's a joke, everybody, okay? You have to be so careful, don't you? Although, is it? They do say feed a cold and starve a fever. So this almighty thing that I'm going to tell you about, almighty in terms of volume and complexity of food, I'm going to tell you about now, may well have a good effect on your immune system. It might not. But that's for you to decide and for you to become responsible for. That's the position I'm going to take this morning here on the show, is that you're responsible for your health. That's probably the best advice anyone can give you, right? Take some responsibility for your health. Do what you need to do. Wash your hands. Look after yourself. Vitamin C. That's why I was out just before the show, getting all the tangerines off the tree. Citrus is like acorns here. And by that, I mean, in England, I'm used to just, the acorns of the oak tree being all over the floor. If you've never seen an acorn before, you might walk around going, oh, these things are so precious. Why are people leaving them on the floor? It's the same thing in Portugal. When you first come here, there are oranges all over the floor. They're like acorns. They're just everywhere. And you think, that's a terrible waste. We should be making marmalade. We should be eating all those oranges. We should be freezing orange juice. And then after a year or two, you're thinking, oh, God, all those oranges, what are we going to do with them? But this year, obviously, a little bit piqued by the coronavirus phenomenon, what better thing to do than get that vitamin C off the tree and eat it straight off? It's being juiced downstairs, I think, by Mrs. M as I speak. Who knows? There may even be a little glass of freshly squeezed, and I don't know what they are. Maybe this is a mystery we can solve on the show of how we can decide whether it's a satsuma, a mandarin, a tangerine, or a clementine. And I'm sure other small citrusy names exist as well. I don't know how to find that out. But anyway, that's not the point right now. The point right now is it's Francesinha Friday, and I'm going to tell you about that thing right now, thanks to Wikipedia. And there you see it, the sandwich, the food type sandwich. Let's go with that classification. Francesinha, meaning little Frenchy, or simply Frenchy in Portuguese. Some say little French girl as well, I don't like that. Let's stick with little Frenchy or Frenchy. Again, that's going to get you in some trouble, isn't it, possibly? I'm popping out for a Frenchy. Well, you just got to be careful. Again, take responsibility. It's a Portuguese sandwich, originally from Porto, and that's the Casa do Dia today. I'm going to show you a beautiful house in Porto later, which we've not done. We've not looked at Porto before in our Casa do Dia trail, but let's stay with the Francesinha right now, made with bread, wet cured ham, linguiça. I don't know what that is, actually. Let's find out. Oh, there we go. A form. Oh, I see. And the linguiça is, I suppose, what might, its later relative might be those kind of smoked hot dogs, because that's what gets substituted, I think, in the Francesinha recipe sometimes. On the kind of lower end budget versions, you get those, those really cheap hot dog sausages, which probably don't have very much meat in them at all, or not the best parts of the animal, you might say. I've got another description of that, which I daren't share with you right now. Fresh sausage, like chipolata, steak or roast meat, and covered with melted cheese and a hot and thick spiced tomato and beer sauce, typically served with French fries. So you get the measure of this bad boy, even though seems to be feminine in its descriptions, but it is a bad boy in terms of what arrives on your plate and the complexity of that thing. It is a food combining nightmare. Has everything in there, and it is to be eschewed clearly by vegans and vegetarians. So let me just share that with you once more. It's a sandwich, so there's bread. There's wet cured ham. There's linguiça. There is fresh sausage like chipolata, for example. There is steak. There's roast meat, steak or roast meat, and then it is covered with melted cheese, and a gravy of tomato and beer is poured upon it. And it's so good when you can still smell the alcohol in that sauce on that sandwich. It is pretty awesome. And of course, you need French fries to soak up the gravy. And there you have it. There's the picture of the cross section of an oily, you can see the oil slick already, of saturated fat coming from the francesinha, and the cross section there, the layers of meat, the bread. The bread is like, I think they call it pain de forma here, sort of made bread rather than natural bread. Mother's pride, I guess you'd call it in the UK. And cheese, not an especially notable cheese. I think you can just put, your kind of catering cheese on the top there. This is not necessarily about including all the most sort of gourmet ingredients in there. This is about quantity and phenomenon. And of course you can. I mean, imagine the most beautiful and the most highly and some sophisticatedly interpreted francesinha would have the best of everything in it. You'd have a sourdough bread, maybe. You'd have the finest cured meats. You'd have the best steak in there. You'd have a really good cheese, but it would be so rich, so Epicurean that it does you every time anyway. It's a pretty awesome phenomenon to cope with on a plate. That would be something else. You'd have to prepare yourself, go into training possibly. Daniel da Silva is the man we have to thank for this, a returned immigrant from France and Belgium. He tried to adopt the croque monsieur, having come back, of course, from that part of the world. And that's something we're familiar with there. If you've traveled in France and Belgium, of course, you will have encountered the croque monsieur. He came back to Portugal when he moved to Porto and created the special sauce and populated the sandwich. Populated is good because it is an area of dense population with local meats in 1953 at A Reguleira, a restaurant in Rua de Bonjardim, Porto, sorry, I'm nipping in and out of my poorly pronounced French and Portuguese. The francesinha quickly became a very popular dish and deeply associated with the city, although it can be sometimes found elsewhere in Portugal. Yes, and my picture of it is from my local cafe in Coria here, the Quinabiba Cafe. That's their version of it. So yes, it's all over Portugal. I think mainly in the north, to be fair. And I think also you probably, where there's less fish, there's maybe more meat and more francesinha. That's just my bit of punditry and guesswork there, but that's my experience as well. A classic francesinha meal would include the sandwich surrounded by a bed of chips, or placed on a bed of chips, doused. Yes, doused is the right word, in the famous sauce, and complemented with a fino, literally meaning thin or fine, which in this context refers to draft beer. Yes, thin glass. A fino is what you order if you want a beer, cerveja up in the north of Portugal. Imperial down Lisbon way. Same thing, Imperial down south, fino up north. But yes, it makes sense, does it not, to have a dish like this with a nice cold beer as well. Locals will have their favorite restaurant with the best francesinha in town, typically arguing about the quality of the sauce. Yes, a secret recipe that varies by restaurant and the quality of the meats. So there you go. That's where all the devil is in the detail of the francesinha, is in the provenance of the various components. And this will never, I mean, it's like scones in England, isn't it? And whether you have jam or cream first. The francesinha debate, where you get the best one, will be a source of much controversy forevermore, I suspect. So Porto and its surroundings is a traditional area of the francesinha, with many restaurants and cafes serving it. It can also be easily found in several other places across the north of Portugal. So yes, Aveiro is a place. And they're saying here, beach resorts, Figueira da Foz, very popular with the Portuguese, right down to Albufeira in the south. In Lisbon, a number of bars and restaurants serve varied types of francesinha. Oh, I see. This always happens, doesn't it? Including variations served with green sauce. I wonder what the basis of that would be. Spinach, maybe. Francesinha standard sauce bottles have been sold in supermarkets across the entire country since the 2000s. So you don't have to make your own from scratch. which is the word everyone seems to use these days, don't they? I made this from scratch. I made that from scratch. Don't need to worry. If you don't want to make it from scratch, you can buy a bottle of Francesinha sauce. And the phenomenon of the bottled sauces may be related to the growth of the sandwich's popularity outside Porto's metropolitan area. And there are variations that you can find for yourself. Look at this one. Let's just have a quick zoom in on that dark beauty. That looks rich, doesn't it? The sauce on that one. And that looks like a fine restaurant to me that serves you your dish in 2 sets of crockery. That's always posh, isn't it, when you have more than 1 plate per meal or per dish. I like that. And so you can see basically the variants there. Cafe Barcolo in Porto does one with prawns and shrimp. Wow. Cafe Abasso in Porto as well, a special one with roast pork. A Cascata is a francesinha especial with mushrooms and cream. I don't know if it's only mushrooms and cream, and that'll be good for vegetarians, or whether that would just be all of the aforementioned things and mushrooms and cream. Wow. And the restaurant Cunha in Porto as well serves an extremely large francesinha if it wasn't big enough already. Other variations of the original include fillings such as pork, chicken, pastrami, tuna, codfish. There would have to be a bacalhau francesinha, wouldn't there? And vegetarian options. Particularly interested to hear from you if you have a vegetarian option. All of those, I believe, should be explored. And the Daily Mail included the Francesinha in their article, 12 life-changing sandwiches you've never heard of. Yes, it is life-changing for sure. The Francesinha sandwich, which I am sharing with you today on the Francesinha Friday. If you're in Portugal, see if you can grab one of those today, and we can make this a tradition that we celebrated here today on the Good Morning Portugal show. There it is, a final shot of the Francesinha on the Francesinha Friday. So yeah, you're listening to me, Munson, on the Good Morning Portugal show.